The king's most cherished pet was treasured like a gem, even more so than his own daughter, but fearing that others would think him perverse, he kept this secret hidden. However, one day, the flea fell gravely ill and was on the brink of death. Before any treatment could be administered, the flea passed away. To honor the flea, the king decided to hold a special marriage contest. Whoever could guess which animal this hide was from would be allowed to marry his daughter. Many talented young men gathered at the palace. The first suitor was a man with squinting eyes. He examined the hide inside and out and declared it was from a female pig. Clearly, his answer was wrong. The crowd breathed a sigh of relief. Next, an old man came up. The princess, who had just relaxed, tensed up again, worried that the man might guess the right answer. Fortunately, he guessed it was tree bark. Then a tall, handsome knight stepped forward. The princess was overjoyed, thinking that surely the knight could guess the right answer. He claimed it was the hide of a sea monster, but once again, he was wrong. The princess was deeply disappointed, while the king secretly enjoyed the difficulty of his secret. At that moment, a hideous giant appeared, scaring the princess so much her face turned pale. Luckily, the guard stopped the giant from entering, but to ensure fairness, the king decided to let the giant in, confident that no one could guess the answer. The king was caught off guard when the giant, upon approaching, sniffed the hide. He immediately recognized the familiar scent, even as a monster. Without hesitation, the giant accurately guessed the answer. The king's smile froze instantly when the princess realized she was to marry the giant. She immediately panicked, crying and screaming. She ran to the rooftop, trying to force her father to take back his decision by threatening to die. But the king, determined to uphold his strange will, ordered her to marry the fearsome giant. The princess was utterly disappointed in her father's cruelty and had no choice but to leave the palace with the giant. It turned out the giant lived on a steep cliff. While climbing, the princess fell off the giant's back. After a hard climb, she finally reached the giant's cave, where she found animal bones scattered all over the ground. When the giant offered her raw meat, she screamed in terror with nowhere to run. She could only hide pitifully outside the cave, but the giant was unsympathetic, forcing her back into the cave to consummate their marriage. In this inhuman environment, the princess became filthy and unrecognizable in just a few days. Just when she thought she couldn't bear it anymore, she heard a voice outside the cave. Without hesitation, she ran out, begging the stranger to help her escape the monstrous prison. The woman, after observing her surroundings, said she couldn't help, but after much pleading from the princess, she finally relented and agreed to send her son the next day to help. The princess, who hadn't expected much, was amazed when, the following day, she saw a man appear from behind the rocks. Overjoyed, she asked the man to carry her, planning to escape by crossing a rope bridge with his exceptional balance. The man quickly made it to the center of the rope, but at that moment, the giant, detecting the scent of living humans, followed the trail to the cave entrance. Upon seeing the princess escaping, the giant roared angrily. The princess was so frightened that she almost caused the man to lose his balance. Luckily, his strength helped him recover. The man kept carrying her, but the giant, determined to catch them, gripped the rope and began climbing after them. Just when they were almost across, the man quickly took out a knife and began cutting the rope, with the giant just a moment away from reaching them. The man hacked at the rope with all his might. In the nick of time, the rope snapped and the giant fell into the abyss. The kind family escorted the princess back to the palace, and their carriage was filled with laughter. But just when everyone was basking in happiness, the terrifying giant suddenly reappeared. To everyone's shock, the giant was still alive. He swung his massive fists like boulders, easily killing the man and his eldest son. The princess was struck with terror, frantically grabbing a knife. She, along with the woman and the younger son, fled the carriage, but the giant was quickly catching up. They could only hide behind rocks, planning to use fire to kill the giant. It seemed the trap worked, but the giant, though burned, only had superficial wounds. Regaining his strength, he killed the young son with a single squeeze. The woman tried to fight him, but she fell victim to the giant's fury. Now only the princess remained. She ran desperately forward, climbing up a slope to avoid the giant's gaze. But she forgot the giant had a nose like a dog's. Soon, he sniffed out her location, with no options left. The princess surrendered, walking down to face the giant. Seeing his eyes bloodshot with rage, she was filled with fear. But she placed her hand on his chest, trying to calm him. Then, she snuggled into his arms, showing affection. The giant's fury slowly dissipated. He patted his back, indicating she should sit on his shoulders. He planned to carry her back to his cave. The princess, resigned, put her hand around the giant's arm, but just a few days later, the princess, covered in blood, returned to the palace. She walked with a cold, unrecognizable stride towards her father and presented him with a chilling gift. Seeing this, the king laughed and cried, and he, along with his ministers, fell to their knees, pleading for her forgiveness. Days later, a coronation ceremony was held at the palace. The princess inherited her father's throne and became the queen. From the moment she wore the crown, she would never again be controlled by anyone.